The desert sun beat down mercilessly on Katherine Owens as she lay crumpled beside the trail, her lips cracked and bleeding, her dress torn and dusty, watching the wagon train disappear into the shimmering distance without her. She had been sick, terribly sick, when they left Independence Rock 3 days ago. The cholera had swept through their wagon train like wildfire, and while Katherine survived, her stepfather decided she was too much of a burden to keep. Her mother had died giving birth to Katherine 18 years ago, and her stepfather remarried when Katherine was only 5. His new wife never wanted her, never loved her, and when Katherine fell ill, it gave them the perfect excuse. They had dumped her by the side of the trail in the dead of night while she was too weak to protest, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a half-empty canteen. That was yesterday morning. Now the canteen was bone dry, and Katherine could barely lift her head. The Wyoming Territory stretched endlessly in all directions, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. She tried to stand again, but her legs buckled beneath her. She fell hard onto the packed earth, scraping her palms raw. Tears streamed down her face, cutting clean paths through the dust coating her cheeks. She was going to die out here. Alone, unwanted, forgotten, the sound of hoofbeats registered dimly in her consciousness. Katherine turned her head with effort, squinting against the harsh afternoon light. A rider approached, leading a packhorse behind him. For a moment she thought it might be a mirage, another cruel trick of her fever-addled mind. But the hoofbeats grew louder, more distinct, and then a shadow fell across her face. "Sweet Jesus," a man's voice said, rough with shock. Strong hands gripped her shoulders, rolling her onto her back. Katherine blinked up at the face hovering above her. A cowboy, maybe 25 years old, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. Dark hair fell across his forehead beneath a weathered hat. His face was all hard angles and concern. "Can you hear me?" he asked, his voice urgent. "Miss, can you hear me?" Katherine's lips moved, but no sound came out. Her throat was too dry, too swollen. The cowboy cursed under his breath and reached for something. A moment later, cool water touched her lips. She gasped and tried to grab the canteen, but he pulled it back. "Easy now," he said, his voice gentler. "Too much too fast will make you sick, just small sips." He let her drink again, just a little, and Katherine had never tasted anything so wonderful in her entire life. The water soothed her burning throat, and she managed to croak out a single word. "More. In a minute," he promised. "Let that settle first. What in God's name are you doing out here alone? Where's your family? Your wagon train?" Katherine closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling out. The cowboy cursed again, softer this time, and she felt him shift. Then his arms slid under her, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. He settled her across his saddle, then swung up behind her. His arm came around her waist, holding her steady against his chest. "Don't you worry," he said quietly near her ear. "I've got you now. You're going to be all right." Katherine wanted to believe him, but belief was a luxury she could no longer afford. She had learned the hard way that family meant nothing, that love was conditional, that she was disposable. But she was too weak to argue, too exhausted to do anything but lean into the solid warmth of this stranger's chest as his horse started moving. She drifted in and out of consciousness as they rode. Sometimes she was aware of the steady rhythm of the horse's gait, the creak of leather, the cowboy's arm keeping her secure. Other times, she was back in the wagon, listening to her stepfather and his wife whisper about what a burden she was, how much easier their lives would be without her. When she woke properly, the sun was lower in the sky, painting the clouds orange and pink. They had stopped beside a creek, and the cowboy was laying out bedrolls near a small fire. Katherine was lying on a blanket, a saddle bag rolled up beneath her head as a pillow. She tried to sit up, and immediately his attention snapped to her. "Whoa there," he said, crossing to her in 3 long strides. "Take it slow, you have been through hell." "Where am I?" Catherine's voice was still hoarse, but at least she could speak now. "About 15 miles south of the Oregon Trail," he said, crouching beside her. "I am Owen Lewis. I have been working as a scout and guide for wagon trains, but I am between jobs at the moment. Was heading to Carlin, Nevada when I found you. Now, suppose you tell me what happened." Katherine looked away, shame burning in her chest. "My family left me." "Left you?" The disbelief in his voice was sharp. "What do you mean, left you?" "I got sick. Cholera. I survived it, but I was weak and we were low on supplies, and they decided I was not worth keeping." The words came out flat, emotionless. She had cried herself dry over it already. Owen was silent for a long moment. When Katherine finally looked at him, his jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "That is the most cowardly, cruel thing I have ever heard," he said quietly. "And I have seen some things in my time. What is your name?" "Katherine Owens." "Well, Miss Owens, I give you my word that you are not going to die out here. I will get you to Carlin, get you fed and rested, and then we will figure out what to do next. Sound fair?" Katherine nodded, though she could not imagine what her future held now. She had no money, no family, no prospects. But at least she was alive, and that was more than she had expected an hour ago. Owen helped her sit up slowly and gave her more water, along with some dried meat and hardtack. The food was tough and bland, but Katherine's stomach accepted it gratefully. As the sun set and the fire crackled between them, Owen told her about himself. He was from Missouri originally, had come west 5 years ago seeking adventure and fortune. He found plenty of the former and not much of the latter, but he did not mind. He loved the freedom of the frontier, the endless sky, the challenge of surviving on his own terms. "What about you?" he asked. "What were your plans before all this happened?" Katherine shrugged, pulling the blanket he had given her tighter around her shoulders. "My stepfather was taking us to Oregon. He wanted to start a farm. I was supposed to help with the work, I suppose. I never had much choice in the matter." "You are 18, Owen said. It was not a question. "Yes, how did you know? Lucky guess. Old enough to make your own decisions now if you wanted to." "Decisions require options," Katherine said quietly. "I do not have any." "Sure you do. You are alive, you are smart, and you are tougher than you give yourself credit for. Anyone who survives cholera and being abandoned in the desert has options, Miss Owens. You just have not figured out what they are yet." His confidence was almost irritating, but there was something comforting about it too. Katherine found herself wanting to believe him, even though experience had taught her not to trust easily. They traveled for 5 more days before reaching Carlin. Owen set a slower pace than he normally would have, giving Katherine time to recover her strength. He was patient and kind, never pushing her beyond what she could handle. At night, he built fires and cooked simple meals, and they talked. Katherine learned that Owen had a younger sister back in Missouri, that his parents had died of fever when he was 20, that he sent most of his earnings home to help his sister and her new husband get established. "That is why I take the scout work," he explained one night as they sat by the fire. "Pays better than cowboying or ranch work, but it is seasonal and I have to fill in the gaps with other jobs." "What will you do in Carlin?" Katherine asked. "There is a ranch outside of town that might need hands. I figured I would check there first, then see what else is available." "What about you?" Katherine had been thinking about that question for days. "I suppose I should look for work too, maybe as a maid or a cook. I am not sure what else I am qualified for." Owen studied her across the flames. "You could do that. Or you could come work at the ranch with me if they are hiring. It is owned by a widow woman, Mrs. Sarah Morrison. She runs it with her 2 sons. I have heard she is fair and decent, which is more than you can say for most employers out here." The idea sent a flutter of something through Catherine's chest. Hope, maybe, or fear, or both. "You think she would hire me?" Only one way to find out. Carlin was smaller than Katherine expected, a dusty town clustered around a railroad depot in the high desert of Nevada. The buildings were mostly wood and canvas, with a few more permanent structures of brick and stone. Owen led them straight to the general store where he bought Katherine a proper dress, a bonnet, and a sturdy pair of boots. "You cannot go looking for work in torn rags," he said when she protested the expense. "Consider it an investment. You can pay me back once you are earning." The kindness of the gesture brought tears to Katherine's eyes. She turned away quickly, not wanting him to see, but Owen had already noticed. He touched her shoulder gently. "You are going to be all right, Katherine," he said, using her first name for the first time. The sound of it in his deep voice did something strange to her heart. "I promise you that." They found a boarding house run by a friendly woman named Mrs. Chen, who gave Katherine a room for $1 a week. Owen took a room as well, 2 doors down. That night, Katherine bathed properly for the first time in weeks, scrubbing away layers of dust and fear and despair. When she looked at herself in the small mirror above the wash basin, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked older, harder, her green eyes haunted by everything she had endured, but she was alive. She was clean. She had a roof over her head and a cowboy who seemed genuinely determined to help her. It was more than she had any right to expect. The next morning, Owen borrowed horses from the livery and they rode out to the Morrison Ranch. It was a sprawling operation about 6 miles from town, with good grazing land and a creek running through it. The house was adobe, solid and cool, with a wide porch and flower boxes under the windows. The barn was well maintained, and Katherine could see cattle dotting the hills in the distance. Sarah Morrison was a tall, weathered woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to Owen's introduction and studied Katherine with an assessing gaze that made Katherine want to squirm. "You ever worked on a ranch before?" Mrs. Morrison asked. "No, madam," Katherine admitted, "but I am a hard worker and I learn fast." "She survived being left for dead in the desert," Owen added. "That takes grit." Mrs. Morrison's expression softened slightly. "That it does. Tell me, girl, are you running from something? A husband, the law?" "No, madam. Just a family that decided they did not want me anymore." The older woman nodded slowly. "I know something about that. My husband's family never approved of me. When he died, they tried to take this ranch, said a woman could not run it proper. I proved them wrong. You willing to prove some people wrong too?" "Yes, madam," Katherine said, meaning it. "All right then. I will give you a trial period. 1 month. You will help in the house, help with the cooking for the hands, and learn some ranch work besides. I pay $20 a month plus room and board. You work out, we will make it permanent. Deal." $20 a month was more than Katherine had dared hope for. Deal. Mrs. Morrison hired Owen too, to his obvious relief. He would be working as a ranch hand, handling the cattle and horses, mending fences, and whatever else needed doing. There was a bunkhouse for the hands, but it was full, so Mrs. Morrison said Owen could use the small cabin near the barn that her late husband had built as a workshop. Over the following weeks, Katherine threw herself into the work with a determination that surprised even her. She woke before dawn to help Mrs. Morrison's cook, an elderly Mexican woman named Rosa, prepare breakfast for the hands. She learned to make biscuits from scratch, to fry bacon for a dozen hungry men, to brew coffee strong enough to strip paint. After breakfast, she cleaned the main house, did laundry, tended the vegetable garden, and helped Rosa prepare the midday and evening meals. It was exhausting work, but Katherine found she did not mind. For the first time in her life, she felt useful, needed. Rosa was kind and patient, teaching Katherine recipes and tricks in a mixture of Spanish and English. Mrs. Morrison was demanding but fair, never asking Katherine to do anything she was not willing to do herself. And then there was Owen. Katherine saw him every day, usually at meals. He would come in with the other hands, dusty and tired, his face tanned even darker by the Nevada sun. He always smiled when he saw her, always asked how she was doing, always made sure she knew he was there if she needed anything. At first, Katherine told herself that his kindness was just his nature, that he would have done the same for anyone. But as the weeks passed, she began to notice things. The way his eyes followed her when she moved around the dining room. The way he always seemed to find reasons to stay after the other hands left, helping her clear dishes or carry water. The way his voice softened when he said her name, and she noticed her own reactions too. The way her heart sped up when she heard his footsteps on the porch. The way she found herself looking for him throughout the day, tracking his movements around the ranch. The way she lay awake at night thinking about the strength in his hands, the warmth in his eyes, the gentle way he had held her when he found her dying in the desert. It terrified her. Katherine had never been in love before. Her stepfather had kept her isolated, always moving, never staying anywhere long enough for her to form attachments. And even if she had met someone, what man would want a girl with no family, no dowry, no prospects? Owen had saved her life, had helped her get back on her feet, but that did not mean he felt anything for her beyond basic human decency. She tried to ignore the feelings, to focus on her work and building a stable life. But it became harder when Owen started finding excuses to see her outside of mealtimes. One evening, about 6 weeks after they had arrived at the ranch, Katherine was in the garden picking tomatoes when Owen appeared at the gate. He had clearly bathed, his dark hair still damp, wearing a clean shirt instead of his dusty work clothes. "Evening," he said, his voice warm. "Thought you might want some help with that." Katherine smiled despite herself. "I am almost done, but thank you." Owen came into the garden anyway, crouching beside her to examine the tomato plants. "These are looking good. Rosa will be pleased. She is the one who taught me how to tend them properly," Katherine said, setting another ripe tomato in her basket. "I am learning so much from her. From everyone here, really. Mrs. Morrison is teaching me the business side of running a ranch. She says a woman needs to know numbers and contracts if she is going to make her way in this world." "She is right about that," Owen said. He was quiet for a moment, then added, "You are doing real well here, Katherine. Better than well. Mrs. Morrison told me she is planning to make your position permanent." Katherine's head jerked up. "She did. She told you that, this morning. She said you have been a godsend," her exact words. "So you can stop worrying about your trial period ending." Relief flooded through Katherine so intensely she felt dizzy. "I cannot believe it. I have a real job, a real place to stay." "You deserve it," Owen said quietly. "You have worked hard for it." Their eyes met and something electric passed between them. Katherine felt her breath catch. Owen reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair back from her face. His fingers lingered against her cheek, rough and warm. "Katherine," he said, his voice low. "I need to tell you something." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "What?" "I know you have been through a lot. I know you probably need time to figure out what you want, where you are going. But I cannot keep pretending that I do not feel what I feel. From the moment I found you in the desert, something in me just knew. I cannot explain it better than that. I care about you, Katherine. A lot more than I should, probably, given that we have only known each other a couple of months. But there it is." Katherine stared at him, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from the possibility of being hurt again. But a bigger part, the part that had been growing stronger every day she spent at the ranch, wanted to take the risk. "I care about you too," she whispered. "I have been trying not to, but I do." Owen's face broke into a smile that made her chest ache. "Yeah. Yeah." He leaned in slowly, telegraphing his intentions, and Katherine met him halfway. Their lips touched, gentle at first, then deeper as Owen's hand cupped the back of her head and Katherine's fingers gripped his shirt. The basket of tomatoes tumbled over, forgotten as Katherine lost herself in the kiss, in the feeling of being wanted, being cherished, being chosen. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. Katherine laughed, surprised by the sound of her own joy. "Me too." They started courting properly after that, though there was not much opportunity for privacy on a busy ranch. They stole moments when they could, sitting together on the porch after dinner, taking walks along the creek on Sunday afternoons, holding hands where no one could see. Owen was a perfect gentleman, never pushing for more than Katherine was ready to give, always respectful of her boundaries. Mrs. Morrison noticed, of course. She did not miss much, but she seemed pleased rather than concerned. "Owen Lewis is a good man," she told Katherine one afternoon while they were working on the ranch accounts together. "Honest, hard-working, not prone to drinking or gambling like some. You could do a lot worse." Katherine felt her cheeks heat. "We are just courting, Mrs. Morrison. Nothing is decided." "Maybe not officially," the older woman said with a knowing smile. "But I have seen the way that boy looks at you, like you hung the moon and stars. And I have seen the way you look at him too. You have a wedding in your future, mark my words." The idea should have scared Katherine, but instead it filled her with a warm, glowing hope. A future. A real future with someone who loved her, who chose her, who would never leave her behind. Summer gave way to fall, and the ranch became a flurry of activity as they prepared for winter. Katherine helped Rosa preserve vegetables and fruits, can meat, and stock the pantry. She learned to ride well enough to help move cattle from the summer pastures to lower ground. Owen taught her himself, patient and encouraging, one hand on her back to steady her as she learned the rhythm of the horse beneath her. One crisp October evening, Owen asked Katherine to take a walk with him after dinner. They followed the creek away from the ranch buildings, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. When they reached a spot where cottonwood trees provided some shelter, Owen stopped and turned to face her. "Katherine, there is something I need to ask you," he said, his voice serious. Her heart started pounding. "What is it?" Owen reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. When he opened it, Katherine saw a simple gold band with a tiny sapphire set into it. "It was my mother's," Owen said quietly. "The only thing I kept when she died. I have been carrying it around for 5 years, waiting to find the right woman to give it to. Katherine Owens. I know we have not known each other long by conventional standards, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. You are strong, you are kind, you are beautiful, and you make me want to be a better man. I love you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Katherine's face as she nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Owen slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, deep and passionate and full of promise. "Yes," Katherine finally managed to say when they broke apart. "Yes, I will marry you. I love you, Owen, so much." They were married 3 weeks later in Carlin's small church, with Mrs. Morrison and Rosa and all the ranch hands in attendance. Katherine wore a cream-colored dress that Mrs. Morrison had helped her sew, and Owen wore his best suit, his hair slicked back and his eyes shining with happiness. The preacher pronounced them man and wife, and when Owen kissed her, Katherine felt like her heart might burst from the joy of it. They honeymooned in Owen's cabin, which they had spent the previous week fixing up to serve as their home. It was small but cozy, with a good stove, a real bed, and windows that looked out over the creek. Owen carried Katherine over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the middle of their home. "Mrs. Lewis," he said, testing out the name. "How does that sound?" "Perfect," Katherine said, reaching up to cup his face. "It sounds perfect." That night, Owen was gentle and patient, taking his time, making sure Katherine felt safe and loved. Afterwards, she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I cannot believe this is real," she whispered. 6 months ago, I was dying in the desert. Now I am married to the most wonderful man in the world, with a home and a job and a future." Owen's arms tightened around her. "You were never meant to die out there. You were meant to find me. Or maybe I was meant to find you. Either way, we are right where we are supposed to be." Katherine had never believed in fate or destiny before. Life had seemed too cruel and random for that. But lying there in Owen's arms, safe and warm and loved, she thought maybe he was right. Maybe everything she had endured had led her to this moment, to this man, to this life. Winter settled over the ranch, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. Katherine and Owen settled into married life with surprising ease. They worked hard during the day, Owen with the cattle and horses, Katherine in the house and helping Mrs. Morrison with the business side of things. At night, they returned to their cabin where they cooked simple meals together, talked about their days, and made plans for the future. "I have been thinking," Owen said one evening in late January as they sat by the fire. "Mrs. Morrison is not getting any younger, and her sons are not interested in the ranch. They want to try their luck in California. She has been talking about what will happen to this place when she is gone." Katherine looked up from the sock she was mending. "What do you mean?" She mentioned that she would be willing to sell shares of the ranch to the right people, people she trusts to keep it running properly. "I have been saving my wages, and with what you have been putting aside, we might have enough to buy a small stake. Not a lot, maybe 10 or 15%, but it would be a start. It would give us a real investment in this place, Katherine. A foundation to build on." The idea excited and terrified Katherine in equal measure. "Do you think we could really do it? Run part of a ranch?" "I think we could do anything we set our minds to," Owen said firmly. "You have learned this business inside and out. You know the accounts as well as Mrs. Morrison does now. And I know the practical side, the cattle and horses and land. Together, we would make a formidable team." Katherine set down her mending and moved to sit beside Owen on the small sofa they had bought in town. "Then let us do it. Let us talk to Mrs. Morrison." They approached Mrs. Morrison the next day, and to their delight, she was enthusiastic about the idea. They worked out an arrangement where Owen and Katherine would purchase a 15% share of the ranch, with the option to buy more in the future. It took most of their savings, but it was worth it. They were not just employees anymore. They were partners, stakeholders in their own future. Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born, foals wobbled on spindly legs, and the grass turned green and lush. Katherine planted a larger garden this year, and Rosa taught her to preserve even more of the harvest. Owen worked from sunrise to sunset, building new corrals, mending miles of fence, breaking in young horses. On a warm May evening, Katherine realized her monthly cycle was late. She waited another week, not wanting to get her hopes up, but when she still had not bled, she rode into town to see the doctor. He confirmed what she suspected. She was pregnant, Katherine rode back to the ranch in a daze of joy and terror. She was going to have a baby. Owen's baby. She was going to be a mother. The thought was overwhelming. She found Owen in the barn brushing down his horse after a long day. When he saw her face, he immediately set down the brush and came to her. "What is wrong? Are you sick?" "No," Katherine said, taking his hands. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Owen's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, joy, wonder, and finally pure elation. He let out a whoop that startled the horses and swept Katherine up in his arms, spinning her around. "We are having a baby." He shouted to the barn, the horses, the world. "Katherine, we are having a baby," she laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I know, are you happy?" Owen set her down carefully as if she might break. "Happy, Katherine, I am the happiest man alive. You are giving me a family, a real family." His words struck something deep in Katherine's heart. She had spent so much of her life feeling unwanted, unloved, disposable. But here was Owen, choosing her every single day, building a life with her, creating a family with her. She had gone from having no one to having everything. The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, barely able to keep food down. Rosa made her ginger tea and bland soups, and Owen held her hair back when she was ill, never complaining, always supportive. As she grew larger, the work became harder, but Mrs. Morrison insisted that Katherine focus on lighter duties and take more rest. "That baby is the future of this ranch," Mrs. Morrison said firmly. "You take care of yourself and that little one." On a cold January night, with snow falling softly outside, Katherine went into labor. Owen rode through the storm to fetch the doctor and the midwife, his heart in his throat the entire time. By the time he returned, Katherine was well into her travail, Rosa and Mrs. Morrison attending her. The labor lasted through the night and into the next day. Owen paced outside the cabin, unable to sit still, jumping at every sound from inside. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, he heard the sound he had been waiting for. A baby's cry, thin and strong. The midwife opened the door, smiling. "You can come in now, Mr. Lewis. You have a son." Owen burst into the cabin to find Katherine propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Owen, meet your son." He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the baby. His son. The boy had a shock of dark hair and a red, wrinkled face, his tiny hands waving in the air. Owen reached out one finger and the baby's hand closed around it with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Owen whispered, his own eyes filling with tears. "You are perfect, both of you." "Katherine, I love you so much." "I love you too," Katherine said. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but had not settled on anything definite. Owen looked at his son, then at his wife, and said, James Christopher Lewis, after my father and yours." Katherine's father, the man who had died when she was born, had been named Christopher. She had almost forgotten. The fact that Owen had remembered that he wanted to honor her real father made her love him even more. "James Christopher Lewis," she repeated. "It is perfect." The first months with baby James were exhausting but wonderful. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's determination. Katherine had feared she would not know how to be a mother, given that she had never had a good example, but her instincts proved strong. She nursed James, rocked him when he fussed, sang to him in a voice that was rusty from disuse but grew stronger with practice. Owen was a devoted father, taking James whenever Katherine needed a break, walking the floor with him at night, talking to him constantly, even though the baby could not understand the words. "You are going to grow up knowing you are loved," Owen told his son one evening, holding him up to look out the window at the stars. "You are going to have a home and a family, and you are never going to doubt for 1 second that you are wanted. I promise you that." Katherine, watching from the bed, felt her heart swell. Owen understood what she had been through, and he was determined that their children would never experience anything like it. As James grew, the ranch prospered. Mrs. Morrison's sons officially signed over their shares to her, and she sold another 20% to Owen and Katherine, making them significant partners in the operation. They hired more hands, expanded the herd, and negotiated better prices for their cattle. Katherine proved to have a head for business, able to negotiate with buyers and manage the books with skill that surprised even her. When James was 2, Katherine became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and she delivered a healthy daughter they named Emma Grace. She had Owen's dark hair but Katherine's green eyes, and she was a happy, sunny baby who smiled at everyone. Owen was thrilled to have a daughter, doting on her shamelessly. "I am going to have to beat the boys off with a stick when she is older," he joked. "Not for many years yet," Katherine said firmly. "Let her be a child first." But their happiness was not without challenges. One summer, a drought hit hard and they lost several head of cattle. Another year, disease swept through the herd, forcing them to quarantine and destroy infected animals. Owen was thrown from a horse and broke his arm, unable to work for 6 weeks. Katherine developed a fever that had Owen terrified it might be cholera again, though it turned out to be a less serious illness. Through it all, they supported each other. When Owen was injured, Katherine took on more of his duties, riding out to check on the cattle herself. When Katherine was sick, Owen managed both the physical work and the household with Rose's help. They were partners in the truest sense, neither one able to function without the other. Mrs. Morrison passed away peacefully in her sleep when James was 5 and Emma was 3. She left her remaining shares of the ranch to Owen and Katherine, making them the majority owners. It was a responsibility they took seriously, honoring her memory by running the ranch exactly as she had taught them. They hired a foreman to help manage the day-to-day operations, freeing Owen up to focus on the bigger picture. Katherine continued to handle the business side, but also spent more time with the children, teaching them to read and write, telling them stories, making sure they knew they were loved. When James was 7, he asked Katherine about her family. "Mama, where are your parents? You talk about Papa's sister in Missouri, but I have never heard you mention your family." Katherine had known this question would come eventually. She and Owen had discussed how to handle it. She took a deep breath and said, "My mother died when I was born, and my father died before I was old enough to remember him. I was raised by my stepfather and his wife, but they did not love me the way parents should love their children. When I was 18, they left me behind." James's eyes went wide. "They left you? Why?" "Because I got sick, and they decided I was too much trouble. But you know what? That turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because if they had not left me, I never would have met your father. He found me in the desert and saved my life, and then we fell in love and got married and had you and Emma. So even though what they did was wrong, it led me to exactly where I was supposed to be." James thought about this seriously. "So sometimes bad things happen so good things can happen later." "Sometimes," Katherine agreed. "And sometimes bad things just happen and we have to be strong and brave and get through them. But having people who love you makes it easier." "I love you, Mama," James said, hugging her tightly. "I love you too, sweetheart, so much." That evening, after the children were in bed, Katherine told Owen about the conversation. "I think I handled it all right," she said, settling into his arms on the porch. "I did not want to lie to him, but I also did not want to scare him." "You did perfect," Owen assured her. He needs to know the truth, but he also needs to know that he is safe, that we will never leave him." "Never," Katherine agreed fiercely. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars come out. Katherine thought about the journey that had brought her here, from that desperate, dying girl in the desert to the woman she was now, strong, successful, loved, a wife, a mother, a rancher. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not found me?" she asked Owen. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Sometimes. I think I would have kept drifting, taking jobs here and there, never putting down roots. I was not unhappy exactly, but I was not complete. You made me complete, Katherine. You and the children, you are my home." Katherine turned to kiss him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. "And you are mine. You gave me a family when I thought I would never have one. You gave me a reason to keep living when I was ready to give up. Everything good in my life comes from you." "We gave those things to each other," Owen corrected gently. "That is how love works. We built this life together." Years passed in a blur of hard work and simple joys. James grew tall and strong, learning the ranch work from his father, showing a natural talent with horses. Emma was clever and quick, picking up reading and arithmetic faster than Katherine had dared hope. When Emma was 6, Katherine had another baby, a boy they named Thomas after Owen's grandfather. 2 years later came another daughter, Margaret, who was the spitting image of Katherine as a child. The ranch continued to prosper under their management. They added sheep to their operations, diversifying their income. They built a proper schoolhouse and hired a teacher, not just for their own children, but for the children of their ranch hands and neighboring families. Owen became a respected figure in Carlin, serving on the town council and helping to mediate disputes. Katherine established a fund to help women and families in distress, remembering all too well what it felt like to have nowhere to turn. She helped several women escape bad situations, giving them jobs on the ranch or helping them get established elsewhere. It was her way of turning her pain into something positive, of making sure that others did not suffer as she had. When James was 16, he asked his father if he could start attending the monthly cattle auctions. "I want to learn that side of the business," he explained. "Mama handles the books and negotiations, but I want to understand how the buying and selling works in person." Owen looked at Katherine, who nodded. "I think that is a fine idea," Owen said. "You are old enough to start taking on more responsibility." James proved to have a good eye for cattle and a knack for negotiation that he had clearly inherited from his mother. By the time he was 18, he was handling many of the ranch's major transactions himself. Emma, meanwhile, showed more interest in the breeding program. She had a gift for understanding bloodlines and genetics, and she convinced Owen to invest in a prize bull that significantly improved the quality of their herd. At 15, she was already being consulted by neighboring ranchers about their breeding programs. Thomas and Margaret were still young, but they were already showing their own interests and talents. Thomas loved the land itself, fascinated by irrigation and crop rotation, talking about how they could improve their pastures. Margaret was a natural horsewoman, fearless in the saddle even at 6 years old. One evening, when Katherine was 42 and Owen was 49, they sat on the porch watching their children work around the ranch. James was schooling a young horse in the corral. Emma was in the barn with a cow about to calve. Thomas was helping the foreman repair a fence, and Margaret was supposed to be doing her lessons but was actually sneaking treats to her favorite pony. "We did good," Owen said, reaching over to take Katherine's hand. "We did," she agreed. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that I have all this." "You deserve it," Owen said firmly. "Every bit of it, so do you." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Katherine thought about that girl in the desert, abandoned and alone, certain she was going to die. If she could have seen this future, this life, would she have believed it? Would she have had the courage to hope? She liked to think she would have. She liked to think that even at her lowest point, some part of her knew that better things were coming. That somewhere out there was a cowboy who would find her, save her, love her, build a life with her. "I love you," she said to Owen, the same words she had said 1,000 times, but that never got old. "I love you too," he replied, the same response he had given every time and always would, when Katherine was 45, Mrs. Morrison's nephew came from back east, wanting to write a history of the ranch and the region. He interviewed Katherine extensively about her experiences, and she found herself telling the story she usually kept hidden. About being abandoned, about Owen finding her, about building a life from nothing. The young man was moved to tears by her story. "Mrs. Lewis, do you mind if I include this in the book? I think people need to hear it, about survival, about second chances, about love." Katherine looked at Owen, who squeezed her hand encouragingly. "All right," she said. "You can tell it, but make sure you tell it right. Make sure people understand that the point is not what I lost, but what I found. That family is not just who you are born to, but who chooses you, who stays." The book was published 2 years later and became quite popular in the territory. Katherine received letters from women all over the West, thanking her for sharing her story, telling her their own stories of survival and resilience. She answered every single letter, offering encouragement and advice where she could. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Katherine with a trip to San Francisco. It was the first time either of them had been to a big city, and they wandered the streets like children, marveling at the buildings and the crowds and the ocean. But after a week, they were both ready to go home. "I miss the quiet," Owen admitted as they rode back toward Carlin. "And the space. And our children." "Me too," Katherine said. "It was a wonderful adventure, but I am ready to be home. Home." The word still filled her with warmth even after all these years. She had a home. A real home with people who loved her, who needed her, who would never leave her behind. James married at 22, a sweet girl named Lucy from a neighboring ranch. Owen and Katherine threw a big wedding, inviting everyone in the county. When Lucy became pregnant 6 months later, Katherine found herself getting ready to be a grandmother, which seemed impossible. Had she really gotten old enough for grandchildren? But when James and Lucy's son was born, a healthy boy they named Owen Christopher, Katherine held her grandson and felt nothing but joy. This was her legacy. This little boy, and all the children that would come after him, would grow up knowing they were loved, knowing they belonged, knowing they had a place in the world. Emma showed no interest in marrying, much to the disappointment of several young men in the area. "I am not opposed to marriage," she told her parents. "I just have not met anyone I like better than my horses. If that changes, you will be the first to know." Katherine understood completely and made sure Emma knew she did not need to marry to have a full and happy life. When Katherine was 50, she and Owen finally paid off the last of the ranch's debts and owned it outright. It was a milestone they celebrated with all their children, their grandchildren, their employees, and their friends. The ranch sprawled over 10,000 acres now, supporting hundreds of head of cattle, a prize-winning horse breeding program, and a thriving sheep operation. "Remember when we bought our first 15%? Owen said, holding Katherine close as they danced at the celebration. "We were so scared we were making a mistake." "Best mistake we ever made," Katherine said. "Second best," Owen corrected. "The best was me deciding to take the long route to Carlin that day instead of the short one. Otherwise, I would have missed you completely." Katherine shuddered at the thought. "Do not even joke about that." "I am not joking. I am just grateful. Every single day I am grateful that I found you, that you said yes to me, that you built this life with me." "I am grateful too," Katherine whispered, "for all of it, even the hard parts, because they led me here." As the years passed, Owen and Katherine gradually handed over more of the ranch operations to James and Emma, though they remained active in decision-making. They spent more time with their grandchildren, of which there were eventually 8, teaching them to ride and rope and run a ranch the way Mrs. Morrison had taught them. Katherine started a lending library in Carlin, donating books and encouraging literacy throughout the community. Owen helped establish a retirement fund for ranch hands who could no longer work, making sure that the men who had given their best years to the ranch would be taken care of in their old age. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a huge party. People came from all over Nevada and even from other territories to celebrate with them. Katherine looked around at the crowd, at all the lives they had touched, all the people they had helped, all the love they had created, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That night, lying in bed in the cabin they had shared for 4 decades, Owen pulled Katherine close. "40 years," he said. "Seems impossible." "Seems like yesterday," Katherine countered, "and also like forever, in the best way." "If you could go back and do it all again, would you change anything?" Katherine thought about it seriously. "Not one thing. Every moment, good and bad, brought us here. And here is exactly where I want to be." Owen kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I love you, Katherine Lewis. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. I love you too, Owen Lewis. Forever." They were both 70 when Owen's health began to fail. A lifetime of hard work had taken its toll on his body. His joints ached, his breathing was labored, and the doctor said his heart was wearing out. Katherine devoted herself to caring for him, just as he had cared for her all those years ago when he found her dying in the desert. "You have to let me go eventually," Owen said one afternoon as Katherine fussed over his blankets. "Not yet," Katherine said firmly. "You do not get to leave me yet, Owen Lewis. We still have too much to do." But they both knew the truth. Owen was dying, slowly but surely. He made Katherine promise that she would not mourn forever, that she would keep living, keep enjoying the life they had built together. "This ranch, these children, those grandchildren, they are all part of me," he told her. "When I am gone, you will still have all of that. You will still have the life we made. Promise me you will keep living it." "I promise," Katherine said through her tears, "but I am not ready to let you go." "I know, darling. I'm not ready to go either. But when it is time, you have to let me. And you have to know that finding you, loving you, building this life with you has been the greatest honor of my existence. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Katherine." "You saved my life," Katherine whispered. "No," Owen corrected gently. "You saved mine. I was just drifting before I met you. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to build something lasting. You gave me everything." Owen passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 weeks later with Katherine holding his hand. She had known it was coming, had tried to prepare herself, but the grief still hit like a physical blow. For the first few days, she could barely function. Her children rallied around her, taking care of her the way she had always taken care of them. James held her while she cried. Emma handled all the funeral arrangements. Thomas and Margaret made sure she ate and slept. Her grandchildren brought her flowers and drawings and stories, trying to make her smile. At the funeral, half of Nevada seemed to turn out to pay their respects. Owen had been loved and respected throughout the territory. Person after person came up to Katherine to tell her what Owen had meant to them, how he had helped them, how much they would miss him. Katherine stood at the graveside and watched them lower her husband into the ground, feeling like half of herself was going with him. But she remembered her promise. She would keep living. She would honor Owen by continuing the life they had built together. In the months that followed, Katherine threw herself back into ranch work. James had taken over most of the operations, but there was still plenty for her to do. She managed the books, negotiated contracts, helped with the breeding program. She spent time with her grandchildren, teaching them the things Owen would have taught them. She told them stories about their grandfather, making sure they knew what kind of man he had been. Slowly, the sharp edge of grief dulled to a softer ache. Katherine would never stop missing Owen, but she learned to live with the missing. She found joy in small things again. A beautiful sunrise, a grandchild's laughter, a successful foaling season. On what would have been their 45th wedding anniversary, Katherine rode out to the spot where Owen had proposed all those years ago. She sat beneath the cottonwood trees and talked to him, telling him about everything that had happened since he died. About James's new business deal, about Emma finally courting a rancher from Wyoming, about little Owen Christopher's first day of school. "I miss you every day," she said to the wind, to the sky, to wherever Owen was now. "But I am doing what you asked. I am living. I am making the most of the life we built, and I am so grateful for every moment we had together." She lived another 12 years, dying peacefully at 82, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. In her final moments, she smiled. "Owen," she whispered, "I am coming." And then she was gone. Katherine was buried next to Owen, their graves marked by a simple stone that read, "Owen and Katherine Lewis." They found each other in the wilderness and built a family that would last forever, because that was the truth. Long after they were both gone, their legacy continued. The ranch thrived under James's management and then under his children's. Emma's breeding program became famous throughout the West. Thomas's innovations in land management were adopted by ranchers across 3 territories. Margaret's daughter became the first female veterinarian in Nevada. Their story was told and retold, a legend in the family. The cowboy who found the dying girl in the desert, the girl who survived being abandoned and built an empire, the love that conquered everything. Future generations of the Lewis family would grow up hearing about Owen and Katherine, about their courage and determination and love. And they would understand that family was not just about blood. It was about choice, about staying, about building something together that would outlast any individual life. Katherine had been left behind by her family, discarded and forgotten. But the cowboy who found her became her new family, and together they created something that would endure for generations. Love, home, belonging, these were the gifts Owen had given Katherine and the gifts they had given each other. And in the end, that was everything.